Happy Halloween, everybody, and with the season, not only is there lots of costumes and candy, but also endless supplies of horror films. So, as a big horror fan, I felt obligated to talk about some horror films and what horror films I really enjoy around this time of year, because I'm a big horror fan, and I'm not alone this time. I'm actually going to have my friend Douglas Beamer on as well. I'm not going to keep you too long, because I could probably talk horror films for hours. We're probably going to narrow it down to maybe 3 or so, maybe 1 or 2 honorable mentions if you have one, but since you're the guest, Douglas, I'm going to let you go first with your number 3.
Coming up at my number 3 here, we got Fright Night. Now, this is the remake version with David Tennant, Colin Farrell, and Anton Yelchin. May he rest in peace. I really wish I remembered the girl's name. She's pretty awesome too, but I can't remember her name. But with that said, we have basically this reimagining, remake-ish kind of movie that should have sucked, but it didn't. And what's great about this is Anton Yelchin's character realizes his next door neighbor is a vampire, and he's going around killing people, and he brings it upon himself to stop that. It's charming, it's stupid, it's funny, and it's well aware that it is all that. And David Tennant adds such a charisma and charm. Anton Yelchin is a great straight man, and then Colin Farrell makes for a pretty decent villain that just has fun with the role. So I actually really, really enjoy this, and I would recommend it highly to anyone. With that said, man, what do you got?
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. The remake for Fright Night is really fun and entertaining. I think I still like the original more, but anyways, my number 3, I have Audition. It's a Japanese horror film from 1999, directed by Takashi Miike, who's also known for directing One Missed Call, which, if you know me, you know I really like Japanese horror films, all Ju-on, Ringu, One Missed Call, Dark Water, all them, but Audition is the one I hold in the highest regard just because of how sick and twisted it is. It's basically, the gist of it is basically this guy who's a widowed, he holds auditions to find a new girl to get, and the girl he ends up picking is a complete psychopath. And it just builds and builds and builds on tension throughout this entire film, right up until the last 15-20 minutes. This film gets extremely nuts. I mean, there are some good scary horror elements throughout. You see some stuff where you see the sick and twisted things that this girl's up to, and she just looks like she just acts like a complete weirdo and has a guy in a sack, and she dismembers people and does really gross things. But the last 15-20 minutes of this is some of the best horror I've probably ever seen, so that's why I had to make Audition my number 3.
Oof. Audition. Not so sure how I feel about that. I might check it out, I might not. I don't know. Yeah. Coming up by my number 2, though, I have The Babadook. I absolutely adore this film. It is not your conventional horror film, but it's definitely one of those that really gets you thinking by the end. And it's not a creature feature. It's not the creature of the month where that one movie that came up and said, hey, we're the next best thing since sliced bread. Because if you're going in looking for a creature feature, you will be upset. If you're going in looking for a straight up horror, you actually will be upset. But there are scary elements inside of it. And it's basically about a mother and her child trying to cope with the loss of their father, the husband. And over that, it's just trying to make ends meet, and, of course, the mother never really gets a moment to herself because this kid is obnoxiously just in her face all the time, always demanding something, has special needs to, get him to calm down because he doesn't have a father figure, so he's not chill. He's a very obnoxious kid. And so the best way I can put it is it's basically about that. And then before you know it, the kid wants to read a bedtime story. Mom picks up this one called The Babadook, and then the rest is history. They get tormented by this entity, and it's just a great look into how you cope with loss and fear and what's inside you. And it's just great. I absolutely love it.
Oh yeah, The Babadook is definitely a very good psychological horror thriller. Definitely one I throw in from time to time. It's not one I watch regularly. But anyways, moving on to my number 2, I have the original Halloween from 1978, which is kind of cliche to have on a horror recommendations list, but I mean, it's just that good. I mean, it embodies all of Halloween and its atmosphere and its horror and its scares. It's literally one of the most perfect horror films, especially around Halloween, that you can watch just because of the atmosphere alone. The leaves on the ground and the horror tropes that this film basically made tropes because this was one of the very first big slasher films. You got the big slasher villain like Michael Myers. It's just such a fun, entertaining horror film that stands a test of time. Not all the sequels are that great. I mean, I do like the new one that they just came out with, but this is pretty much the gold standard for slasher films and horror in general. So that's why I have to put this on my recommendations list.
The original Halloween. I gotta say, I liked Halloween, to be honest with you, but I didn't find it all that amazing. Like, I think it's a classic. I do enjoy it, but Halloween didn't reach out to me like it did for everybody else. I own it. I even own the second one, which I still need to see, but still, Halloween is a good movie. I just never got into it like everybody else. I guess we're going to get into honorable mentions, and if we're getting into honorable mentions, I'll name off my two with kind of like a little explanation, but not by much. Honorable mention, starting with my first one, is Saw. This movie changed my life in so many ways. It got me thinking about horror and the way twists are presented, and the concept of like people being enclosed in something and they can't get out of. I absolutely loved it. The twist in the end is very classic. It's very amazing, and it just like kind of boggles your mind for a little bit. The next honorable mention that I have is Pandorum. This one goes under a lot of people's radars. It's basically a ship in deep space. They don't have any idea where they are. It's Dennis Quaid and Ben Foster, a highly underrated film. It's great. Just check it out. That's all I'm going to say.
Those are some really good honorable mentions. I mean, I like the Saw films, especially the first two. I think the first one is the best of the franchise, and then the second one isn't that bad either. Then it kind of fell off for a bit. I've seen all of them, but I kind of forget where some of them are just because they are kind of bleh overall, but still a great entry for honorable mentions especially. And I actually haven't seen Pandorum. I'm going to have to put that on my list of things to watch with everything else, but those are really good honorable mentions. My two honorable mentions, though, are kind of more modern horror films just because I wanted to mix it up with a little bit of classic, a little bit of modern. But the first one I have is Don't Breathe, the film from a couple of years ago, directed by Fede Alvarez. Definitely a very uneasy film. I mean, you probably know the plot because it's still fairly recent. You know, these trio burglars, they want to break into this, steal all this money this blind man has, and shit gets real once they actually break in and realize this blind man has a pretty weird past. He's definitely not your average blind person. I'll just leave it at that, because this movie gets pretty wild in parts. It's got some really crazy, scary elements, also some really weird, gross-out moments that I was not expecting going into this film, which I was really impressed by. And not only that, but my other honorable mention is the film Oculus from a couple years ago, directed by Mike Flanagan, who's actually one of my favorite directors, not even just horror films, but directors in general. Based around this family. Basically, the glass, killed their dad. It's a weird concept to describe. The laser glass in the film causes a lot of weird things to happen for this family, and apparently it caused their family to, their mother and their father to die, and Karen Gillan and Brandon Thwaites, they get the mirror back and they want to try and test it out and see if they were actually crazy or not, if that was actually the mirror that killed them or they just had a really dysfunctional family. And just really crazy psychological kind of stuff going on in this film. You got, there's also intersecting stories because they show flashbacks of the family back then. It's seamless, really. They're walking in almost intersecting each other. Sometimes they interact with each other. And really interesting storytelling that you can see they actually use a lot in The Haunting of Hill House as well, the show that Mike Flanagan just did for Netflix. But yeah, those are definitely two really good modern horror films in my opinion.
Definitely seen Don't Breathe and Oculus, and those two were pretty interesting to say the least. Don't Breathe had an interesting concept, but I wish they executed on it more. But, I mean, that ending, though, was really messed up. And then Oculus, I very much enjoy. I'm a big fan of Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, but I think I'll kick off number one just because mine's kind of a more cliche one, and then that is The Exorcist, which is a film that's kind of messed me up throughout my entire life, maybe because I watched it at a very young age when I probably wasn't supposed to. But this film is creepy on many levels. It just has so many layers that you could just pull up, where there's different psychological stuff, there's biblical kind of stuff, there's just really great tension and horror. You got Linda Blair, that's the possessed child, and all the different priests, and there's just so many great moments in this film that if I could spend hours listing them all. It's just it's probably one of the quintessential possession films. I think there's no film that's come out since that's ever topped this as far as the possession demon kind of stuff, just because this is the gold standard. With Halloween, this is the gold standard for possession films, and it's actually one of the best horror films probably I've ever seen in my life, and it deservingly won a lot of awards when it came out back in the 70s, and I don't think it ever could be replicated. It's just one of those movies I feel like could never, ever be remade and be good. It's just like, it's that perfect.
Goodness me, Exorcist, man, that's a good one. Definitely a good one. I rather enjoy that one. It's definitely creepy. But my number one pick out of all this is Cabin in the Woods. I mean, oh my god, this movie is a ton of fun. It's not scary in the slightest, but it plays on the horror tropes, the cliches, and they twist it around in such a awesome fashion. And it's Joss Whedon and Andrew Goddard that I think, or Drew Goddard, they just created a masterpiece in my eyes. This movie is a ton of fun. It becomes so much more than what it's presenting, and it has some awesome deaths. It looks like everybody's having a ton of fun, and I overall dig this movie so much. I highly recommend it. The ending is chaotic, and it's just so far into your face. I thought the movie was going to end at 3 different points in this movie, and it never did. And it was like having a treat. Like, no, we're not ending. Don't worry about that. Keep going. And then you're rewarded in the end. But that's pretty much my top picks for horror movies that I would recommend to anybody. I really, really enjoy this. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this, Tyler. This was a lot of fun, and it was great meeting you in Maryland.
It was great meeting you as well, Douglas, and thank you so much for joining me on this video for my channel talking about horror films. If you haven't subscribed to Douglas yet, definitely check him out. I'm going to leave his links down below if you want to check out his channel, leave a comment on one of his videos. He does more TV reviews than I do. I'm more of a movie person, but he does a lot of TV shows, so if you like TV, he's your guy to go to. But thank you so much for checking out my video. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of it. Let me know your favorite horror films, or if you agree with our list, whether it be mine or Douglas's. Let me know. But thank you so much for checking out this video. If you liked it, feel free to leave a like. Hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all my movie reviews, trailer reactions, unboxings, and more. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.